Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. Today we are going to start to expand our imagination of what's possible for our speaking business. For this podcast, we go across the pond to my friend and client, Shola Kaye. Welcome, Shola, to the podcast.
Hi, Jane. It's so good to be with you here.
Ah, I have been wanting to have you on this podcast for quite some time. Now, I know, of course, because we work together, I know a fair amount about your business, but tell everybody about your current business model. What do you do? Who do you do it for?
I'm a predominantly a keynote speaker, but I also do trainings, leadership training. And my clients, I'd say 60% of them are in the USA, predominantly in California, which can be interesting since I'm based like 8 hours time difference ahead of them.
Is it
Um,
any further away? No.
yeah, it's an interesting one, but it means sometimes I'm just working at nights and then I have my days free, which can be really cool. And so most of my clients are in the tech space, but they're across the board. I mean, I have some that are in the energy space, others that are fast moving consumer goods, so kind of across the board, but mainly tech clients.
Yeah. And so, because you speak in the DEIB space, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, it makes sense that tech, because there's so high growth, is a good market for you. Like they have grown probably without a lot of cultural, ideas in place. They maybe didn't have a really clear understanding of what they wanted as they were just growing so exponentially. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, I definitely think it's true. And even though DEIB is a big area right now, and rightly so, because there's so much work to be done, I do feel that there are a lot of organizations that are still very much at the beginning of their journey. And some of them might be, as you say, Jane, smaller tech companies who've grown very quickly and they don't have much in place. But then even some really large companies, it's quite interesting to see where they are. And perhaps because they are so large, they've had to move a bit slower than other smaller companies. So they're
Right.
still feeling their way, getting things in place.
Right. And I'm so happy for you that you're on this wave because I don't see it going away anytime soon. Do you?
Yeah, it's a big area, and I speak on empathy, and empathy intersects with diversity, equity, and inclusion, intersects with leadership, intersects with communication, and even now, as we kind of are teetering potentially on the verge of a recession, I've had clients come to me saying we've had to let people go. Can we come and do some leadership sessions on empathy so that our leaders do this in a kind and humane way.
And do the
So it's quite interesting.
So that's an interesting place that you're seeing people who are letting employees go, leading into, which I think is kind of a fear-based decision, by the way, because we don't really know what the recession is going to bring. But also, we have the great resignation. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there, I think, for people who do get let go because there are still a lot of employers who are scrambling to try to find enough people for their teams, right?
Yeah, I think it's a really unique situation at the moment because when I, really doubled down on empathy, and I think last year I did a white paper and did some round tables and spoke to lots of HR leaders, and they were really talking about, well, how do we retain people? And then, you've got some people who are letting staff go, others who are still trying to retain and recruit. So it's a really interesting kind of mix of things that are going on right now in the
Yeah,
marketplace.
yeah, there's a lot of problems to be solved.
Yeah.
A lot of problems to be solved. Well, okay. So let's talk about kind of where your business has come from. How many years ago did you start into the speaking business?
I probably started in the speaking business, I'd say sort of 5, 6 years ago, but just very much on a part-time basis. So just doing a little bit alongside other work.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was really mainly in the lockdown. Lockdown forced me to really double down on my speaking business. And obviously I'm very glad that I did.
Yes, yes, I'm glad that you did too, because Would you have imagined? So you started out by doing contracts locally in the UK in your backyard, maybe where? In the rest of Europe, perhaps? And now have seen like just this massive growth to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because years ago, I lived in the USA for about 7 years, and I went to graduate school and worked for a few years, and then came back to the UK. And I had wanted to kind of break into the US speaking market for a while. And it was hard, obviously, because clients may not want to fly you over to the States, etc., because of the expense.
Yes.
And then when lockdown hit, suddenly there was a level playing field because wherever you're from,
The world is
it's all the
flat.
same. Yeah.
Which was a beautiful thing. And that really allowed you virtually to cross the pond and get and start to gather momentum with US clients. Okay, so 5 or 6 years ago, could you have imagined the types of deals that you're booking today? Because I think the UK is similar to Canada in that we kind of have some limitations in our mindset in terms of what's possible with our fees and how high we can go. Would you say 5 years ago you could have imagined, last month's contracts?
No, no way, no way. And I remember thinking, gosh, sort of looking at some of the speakers who are really big in the States and sort of knowing the kind of fees that they command, just thinking, well, there's no way, especially being here in Europe, there's no way that, I could ever command any of those sorts of fees. And then looking at bigger deals, so not just the keynote, but the leadership training or the 10 session package or the 20 session package or whatever it might be, just never. It was just like a kind of black box. Like, what's in there? How do you get in?
How do you get in? And then once we kind of turned the key and opened up the black box, it's like, there's a lot of opportunity in here. Not only can I do some virtual things to make myself available for bigger contracts, but I can also charge more, flying from the UK to California, obviously, that's a big deal. And of course, we want to charge appropriately for that. The reason I really wanted to do this session with you is because I just want to ask our listeners, are you putting any barriers on yourself? Are you putting any limits on what you think is possible? Because Shola and I are here to tell you that we don't actually know where the top end lies right now. And even here in Canada, I have seen one of my other clients, Kendall, just blow through what I thought were the limits on Canadian speakers and keynote fees, unless you had some sort of, if you went to the moon, if you're Chris Hadfield, then you're in good shape. Other than that, I thought there were some limits, and there aren't. And I'm here to tell you that there aren't. So Shola, talk a little bit about, so I'm getting ready to publish the Wealthy Speaker 3.0 this fall. And so we have flashpoint stories in there. Talk a little bit about what some of the flashpoints were, some of the moments when you saw acceleration in your business.
Hmm. Well, first of all, I think during lockdown, once I realized that it was really time for me to expand rather than try and wait things out, the first thing that I did is I thought, okay, well, how do I expand to another market? And so I was using LinkedIn quite heavily. And I actually thought, well, let me engage. I engaged a couple of agencies to see what they would do, because I had quite some fears, like, who am I? How can I get these big name, household name clients? There's no way. So I thought, well, if I use them, then, I won't be stopping myself. So they were out there just pitching and connecting with whomever. They weren't thinking, oh, Shola's thinking quite small, let's just do the small companies. They didn't think that.
Yes.
So when I started getting some of the big tech companies and big global companies interested in me, it was kind of quite scary in a way, like, how on earth? But I think what I found is sometimes when you put limits in your own way, what can be better is just find somebody who can help you, whether it's even that you have a barter arrangement or you've got some extra cash to hire someone in who hasn't got the same fears. So that really helped me hugely to tread, where I would never have trodden otherwise.
Hiring other people can often help you explore a bigger vision for yourself. I have coaches that tell me all the time, you're a rock star, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I probably needed to hear that today. Because don't we sometimes start to move into like an imposter syndrome or any version of self-doubt? Have you battled with self-doubt throughout your business?
Oh, hugely so, yeah. And you know this, Jane, because you were coaching me, but I'd come and, oh, I don't think I can do this, Jane, or oh, I've got a quote for this. Is that enough? And you say, no, double.
You'll say, this is our conversation. Shola emails me and says, I've got this client and this is the situation. What should I charge? And Jane writes back, charge your fee. Definitely. Just charge your fee. We have an international fee. We have a corporate fee. And actually, that same fee applies to nonprofits. So, charge your fee is often the answer. But I think sometimes having someone in your back pocket to just say, of course you can do this. You're a badass. Look at all the things that you've done already. Sometimes I think we just need to hear that from somebody else to kind of go, oh, yeah, you're right.
Absolutely, absolutely. And something else that you kind of really worked with me on was just this idea of the vision and intention too, because once I sort of had my foot in the door a bit more with the keynotes, and I was thinking, well, the thing with keynotes is you're constantly having to get the next one and the next one. So I was thinking, well, how about the bigger deals where you've perhaps got 4 keynotes or you're doing a big leadership training. And so then I started to think, well, how can I package my keynotes together to create a program? And then when somebody comes to me and says, can I have the keynote? I say, well, actually, there's 4 parts of this program. Why don't we discuss that instead? So that was another big moment for me.
Okay, so hiring out, intentional packaging is the second one. What's the third one?
Another thing that was really helpful for me was upgrading and I know a lot of people had to do this when they went virtual, but really upgrading my keynote and also my software that I was using.
Oh,
So
good.
I started using Prezi Video, and no, Prezi's not, it's not like green screen, it's it's not particularly complex at all, but
Yeah.
a lot of the big enterprises, because they have to be really careful about the software that they bring in, they haven't been exposed to certain software. So one client now who I've got a very big leadership project with, when I came in with Prezi Video, which is like $9 a month or something to use, they were like, wow, we love your keynote and your software is amazing. And then they booked me to do a very big leadership training. And I said, oh, you are bringing that software, aren't you? I said, of course, if you want it, of course, it's there.
I have to tell you, Pamela Barnum was the first one who used Prezi Video for us. We demonstrated it. We had her in the school showing everybody how she used it, and she also got booked a lot because she had and Prezi is not, like you said, it's not a big, huge, expensive software. And I think once you grow comfortable with it, it just allows you to, in a very easy way, change screens and show slides side by side or whatever way you want to do it. And I think that in my mind, your intention was to level up. So it wouldn't have mattered what tools you used to level up. It just matters that you cared about leveling up and taking your presentation to the next place. And I think virtually people really saw that and they loved it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing with the virtual is I made sure that my talks were super interactive. And for me, I mean, it fires me up as well, because you never know with any audience what they're going to put in the chat box, or what's the flavor going on at their organization. So it kept me on my toes so that the keynotes weren't stale, but also they loved the fact that they could put something in the chat and I would immediately address it in my keynote and say, oh yeah, Jane, I totally agree with you, or yeah, John. And that really people came away energized and feeling like they were closer to me, and I felt like I was closer to them, and that really made a huge difference to me in terms of just that connection with the audience.
It's so nice. And so imagine you go in and you do a keynote to kind of launch whatever the event is live in person. Then you can do these virtual events feeling like you already have some relationship with this audience. Now, let me ask you a little side question because it's about empathy and things like that. Are people able to communicate with you anonymously? And uh, I'm just wondering if people feel more comfortable saying difficult things anonymously in a corporate setting.
I think sometimes what happens is if there's an opportunity for them to connect with me without having to share with everybody, I see some comments come in. And then I always encourage people at the end to connect with me on LinkedIn,
Yes.
because I say, well, I've been talking for the last hour, but I want to hear from you. Let me know what you're up for next. And I've
Oh,
had people connect and say, oh, thank you, this topic of empathy, I'm having struggles with my wife. I'm going home right now after this keynote, we're going to talk, this has given me the courage to have a conversation. So
oh man.
those sorts of little comments are really rewarding for
Yes.
me.
For sure. And this business is rewarding. I mean, let's remind ourselves. Number one, the fact that anybody would even give us $500 for an hour of our time is crazy, right? The fees that we're talking about here are quite advanced, and we're so lucky and grateful to be a part of this industry. But also think about every one of you listening. You're out there changing people's lives. And Shola, your topic really goes right to the heart of what's going on in the workplace, and being more empathetic in the workplace is such an important topic right now, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I started speaking about this probably 4 or 5 years ago with a TEDx talk that I was lucky enough to get. And I remember thinking, well, what can I speak on? And I just ended up doing this topic because it touched me and it connected with my own personal story.
Yeah.
And who I was never to know that years later, now empathy is just blowing up as a topic, and it's a really big one for many reasons. So yeah, I'm super grateful.
That actually leads me to a point that I really just want to make on your behalf, and the fact that you've been brave enough to put your flag at the top of the mountain of empathy and say, this is what I'm speaking on. Because really, when we met, you had a larger repertoire of potential topics. And you have been very brave about narrowing down your topics kind of to this one space. And that can be a little bit scary sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when we went through my website and I had, 4 or 5 different keynotes on different, like hedging my bets, or I have one on this and one on that. He
Yeah.
said, look, just try and tie them all together so that there's some kind of theme going on. And I'd already written a couple of books, mainly on communication. So it felt really risky for me to move away, even though empathy and communication, of course, are related. It felt
Yes.
quite risky to move away. But one thing I found that helped, which is not the same extent of commitment as a full book, was doing the white paper,
Mm.
because I found that I get quite a few leads from the white paper because people are interested in empathy, and obviously the time commitment is less, but it can be more in depth in a way. So if you're a bit intimidated out there by doing a whole book, then maybe a white paper or something like that, special report could be a way forward.
Yeah, any way to document kind of and claim that stake in the ground that says this is what I am an expert in. I think that's a great way to go. It can also be an excellent lead magnet, a white paper. And so, how if people are curious about that and would like to get a hold of the white paper, I'm totally putting you on the spot here. Do you know the link offhand, or should we share it in the show notes?
Yeah, if they go to my website, sholakaye.com, just sort of underneath the image of me, there's a banner there, and you can actually click and get hold of the white paper. And I can give you the link later on for the show notes too, Jane.
Okay. So Shola is Shola. Kay is KAYE. .com or .net?
It's .com.
I think you have both, but okay.
I have both. I do, yeah.
Perfect. All right. Shola, incredible. I really love talking to you. If you had any advice for a speaker, let's say who was just getting started like you were 5 or 6 years ago, what would you tell them? Or what advice do you wish you would have had 5 or 6 years ago when you were first beginning?
I would say that although the speaking business from the outside can seem really hard to get into, I think you've got to work on your skills. You've got to work on being a good speaker, solid speaker with a topic that people are interested in. But it also has to fire you up too. Because I've had people come to me and say, Shola, which topic should I speak on? I'm like, I hardly know you. How can I tell you, right? So it's got to come from, it's got to resonate with you as an individual, but also be something that others are interested in. So it's that working on two things at the same time. Make sure that you're a solid speaker, but also you've got to work on the business side of things. So as I said to Jane, I got someone to help me initially. I've had people help me do a little bit of PR. Even when I had almost no money, I'd find someone who could do 2 hours a week because I was too afraid to approach anyone, right? So if you're afraid, then just get someone to help you in the beginning until you have that momentum.
And I love that they said, we're going to pitch you to IBM. And you're like, gulp, okay, let's do it. And then all of a sudden, IBM is interested. And I won't say that as exact, but something like that I know actually has happened. And your client list is like the who's who. So congratulations. I know there's been a little trepidation along the way, but you have been fearless in narrowing your lane. And I think that the market is really, really lucky to have you. And
Thank you, Jane. You've been so helpful. I've really, really enjoyed our relationship and looking forward to it continuing and doing even bigger and better stuff.
Yes, for sure. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, would you say LinkedIn is the best way to do that?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, Shola Kaye. I have the what's it called, the creator profile. So it's easier to follow me than to connect, but go through connect because I'd rather connect than just be followed, quite honestly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shola. If you're listening in, I hope that this has allowed you to think a little bit bigger. This is like the summer of possibility for me. And I'm glad that has been that for you as well, Shola. You're listening in. I hope it is for you as well. And with that, we'll say, see you soon, wealthy speakers. Bye for now.